It's really fitting that we should talk about leadership in this way, in which we consider compassion and mindfulness and success together, and to see how that's possible. And before I bring my next speakers on stage, I'd really like to share a little bit about the amazing things they have done in being mindful and compassionate leaders themselves, because they are extraordinary people who've done extraordinary things in the world. We'll have on stage shortly Pagmasree Warrior, who many of you might know is a visionary and creative and inspiring leader here in Silicon Valley. Until very recently, she was the chief technology officer for Cisco Systems, overseeing a team of 24,000 engineers worldwide. Before that, she was the chief technology officer at Motorola, and Forbes magazine has named her for 2 years in a row one of the 100 most powerful women in the world. Fast Company has also called her one of the 100 most creative people in the world. And she is truly a mindful, visionary, and inspiring leader. She sits on the board of Gap Inc. and is a trustee of Cornell University, but perhaps most importantly, I know, and having spent some time with her, that mindfulness is central to the way that she leads in the world. Joining her on stage with me also for conversation will be Dr. Larry Brilliant. Now, if you're not aware of Dr. Brilliant's work, he has done amazing things in the world. He oversaw the eradication of smallpox on Earth. And at the time where he was working at the World Health Organization and was presiding over this eradication of this infectious disease, at that time, 2 million people a year were dying of smallpox. And today, it's eradicated from the earth. Which was really part of the mission of compassion and mindfulness that he was charged with by his dear teacher. He went on after eradicating smallpox, as if that's not enough, to found the Seventh Foundation, which really has its mission addressing curable blindness in the world through things like interocular surgery and eyewear. And to date, he has led and directed that effort, and to date, they have cured 4 million cases of blindness across the world in developing countries. After that, he went on to be the executive director for Google.org, directing some of the foundation work and the philanthropic efforts there. And currently, he is the president and CEO of the Skoll Global Threats Fund, which has its mission addressing things that imperil humanity, such as climate change, nuclear proliferation, conflict in the Middle East, and so forth. So, like I said, an amazing leader, both amazing leaders, both who really have at the core of what they do, mindfulness, kindness, and compassion. And through these qualities, they've achieved these amazing things in the world. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Pagmasree Warrior and Dr. Larry Brilliant. Welcome, it's great to be up here together.
Thank you.
And this is going to be something of a conversation on mindfulness and compassion and its value to each of you. So I just want to ask you both to begin with, what is the role of mindfulness for you? Why is it important? What role does it play for each of you?
I'll start. I think for me, it is really inherent in everything that I do. I think it is, as the speakers before us pointed out, I think, and thank you by the way, what wonderful words that were spoken up here. It's really pausing and taking a moment to really think about all of the things that we have to deal with in our lives, right? You know, our work, our family, our friends, our community, and taking the time to really be aware and be purposeful about how we interact with other human beings. Because if you think about work and if you think about business, it is really about relationships. It's really, to me, leadership is about having an impact and creating a community of people that believe in the purpose of what they're doing. And you know, there are studies that show that people actually enjoy work and will stay at what they're doing, not necessarily because they're paid a lot of money, but more so if they feel their work is meaningful. And the way to create meaning in the work that we do means that we really have to be purposeful and be aware of what we do. So to me, mindfulness is how I interact with people every day that I come across in my life, and that includes work, right? The work is just one aspect of what we do in the entirety of life on this earth.
So when I was a younger person, substantially younger, and my wife Girish and I lived in India, and we would sit in front of our guru and eat Brahma Baba, who lived in this idyllic ashram at the corner of India, Nepal, and Tibet. You can visualize that. We would sit in front of him and you could feel it, that he loved everyone in the world. You could feel that he had oceans of compassion. And I thought, well, that's fine and good for him. He's a guru. That's his job. But the remarkable thing that to this day I can't explain is that when I sat in front of him, I loved everyone in the world. I had compassion for everyone in the world. And that's my goal. That's where I want to be. And so when he said that I should leave the ashram and I should go work for the United Nations and help eradicate smallpox, by the way, that's help, not lead. Same with Seva, that's help, not lead. Same with Skoll, that's help, not lead. When he said that was my dharma, that was my destiny, and that was my duty, the rest of my life has been trying to find those things which look like that to do. It got harder as we eradicated smallpox. Now that's really difficult to understand, but if you're told by your guru, help to eradicate smallpox, and then there's no more smallpox, you're left on your own. And meditation and mindfulness is one of the methods I use, we all use, to come back to that place. But you know who Lex Luthor is? He's, of course, the arch enemy of Superman, and you may know Professor Moriarty, the arch enemy of Sherlock Holmes, and maybe even Magneto, the arch enemy of the X-Men. They tell you they are very mindful, and the writers who write their character make them as meditators and mindfulness. That's not where we want to be. We don't want to be Lex Luthor, do we? We don't want to be Professor Moriarty. So we need to remember that mindfulness, meditation as it is, and yoga, love and compassion, those are some of the gates that we have to go through to be in the place that we want to be in. And also, the biggest gate, the most important gate is service. If we don't have service, and Mahatma Gandhi said, work is worship. If we don't have that service, then it's harder for us to get to the gates, to the place that we want to go. So that's what I think about. I think about how I felt at the moment I sat in front of my teacher, and I could feel that feeling of love and consciousness. Lee was describing it so well for everyone in the world, as I do right now. Or I try to do right now.
Thank you. So when did you both become aware or mindfulness? How did this come into your lives? You spoke a little bit about your guru or teacher. How did you become mindful?
So I grew up in India, and I think when I was growing up in India, by the way, I think of mindfulness not necessarily as a practice, it may be contrary to what was being said here, but more as a way of living. I think it is something that you have to incorporate and make it a part of your life. So I grew up in India and I was a dancer when I was young. I trained in Indian classical dance. And one of the things that you're taught when you're training as a classical dancer is to focus and concentrate, and you're actually not allowed to perform in front of an audience until you master how to concentrate and how to focus on things. So I think that was probably my first introduction. I started doing dance when I was very young, when I was 5 years old or 6 years old, of learning how to focus on being present in the moment and focusing on what I was doing. But I think much later in my life was when I realized how important it was to be in a place every single day where you are training your mind and your body to be calm under stress. To me, that moment, I literally can point that out, came almost 23 years ago when I lost my mom. I was very close to my mom. She lived in India, I was in the US. I was very focused on my career and my family. And intellectually we all know what death is and what loss is, but emotionally we don't know what it is until we experience that. And I think at that moment I realized I really needed to find a place where I could go assess what was important in my life and paid attention not only to myself, but in paying attention to myself and my surroundings, I was able to pay better attention and be kind to the world around me. And so that was sort of the beginning of I practice meditation every single day, even though I travel a lot for my work. And by the way, I also think, at least for me, it is you can sit on your bed in a hotel room and practice and meditate. There is really no particular method or way. It is really where you find your own calm. I paint, I'm an artist. For me, that's meditative. For some other people, it's going on a walk that could be meditative. It is whatever you do that allows you to turn out other distractions. And I'm an engineer as well, like Ming. It's a way to amplify the signal and reduce the noise. And whatever technique you can use to allow yourself to get to that stage, that's what to me mindfulness is. So I would say maybe it was 23 years ago that I actually realized and paid attention to being mindful, but I probably had it inherent in me through my training in classical dance.
How many of you are yoga practitioners? It's a pretty good number. The root origin of the word yoga, it's the same word as the word yoke. And in India, you'll constantly see carts with bullocks pulling a cart if you go into the most remote periphery. And that idea of a cart being tied to the propelling force, again, like Ming's example of John Wayne, we won't talk about his politics, on top of the horse, being able to guide the horse. So yoga is to yoke something to something. And what is it? It's to yoke your soul, your heart, to God. That's what it means. It means union, but in a sense of a divine union. It is that which we aspire to, whether you call it God, or you call it bodhicitta, or whatever words you use in your culture or your religion or your path. So to get there, this form of yoga is one of the methods. And if you're Jewish, you've been raised since you were a child with this idea of tikkun olam, to heal the broken world. And every Jew is supposed to engage in healing the broken world. I feel like I'm doing that practice when I'm doing my yoga. Specifically, the yoga that my guru gave me is called Nishkam Karma Yoga. There won't be a quiz. It means not attachment, union with God. Becoming reunited with God without attachment, doing the work without attachment to the results and without attachment to your feet that are walking that path. I find it hard. All yoga is hard. All sincere chasing after the divine is hard, and it's easy because it's yours. And that's my path. So for me, if it's eradicating smallpox or polio or working on blindness or pandemics, it's I feel like I've been given both the hardest, but more the easiest task, because I can identify what my guru told me to do. And I wish that kind of easy clarity at everybody. And the question is, when you don't have a living guru who tells you what to do, in whom you have faith, and you happen to be on top of a mountain, near the Himalayas, and it's a nice day, what do you do? And that's what mindfulness helps you to do, to get the clarity of knowing in the next moment, what are you hearing that is words for you, your guidance, and what are you hearing, what's the clutter, what's the noise, and how do you discern between them?
So we only have a very limited amount of time here together. I feel like we could have this conversation for possibly hours. But in the few moments we have left together, what else, is there anything else you might want to communicate or share with the audience about this broad topic of mindfulness?
Yeah, I think for me, the one thing I would share, I'm assuming most of the audience here is in business and in the business of technology. I think one of the things I'd like to do is to actually relate that back to the work that we do. I'm an engineer, I've led engineers, large groups of engineers worldwide, and one of the things that I think being mindful helps me become a better leader, because you are, paying attention not just for what you want to get done in any transaction, but how do you make that a win for the other person? I think this is the best way. This is the techniques I use in recruiting people to make sure that people are motivated to do what they need to do in communicating my message. I think about it when you're making a presentation. Don't think about what is it that you want to say, but think about what is it that people want to hear. I think it's simple things like taking yourself away from the center of the purpose of everything you do and making the people around you and the person in front of you more of the center. So when I'm recruiting somebody or when I'm talking to somebody about joining my team, I think about what is it that's going to make them excited about it. What is it that they're going to feel meaningful about the work that they do? When I'm talking to a customer, I think about how is what I'm developing, the product or technology, how is it going to help their business? How is it going to help them become successful as a leader? I think these are the kinds of things that have helped me become, I think, a better leader. And as you pointed out, I just 2 days ago left Cisco. One of the things that I will always remember in my farewell party, it was a very emotional, farewell from my team at Cisco. They gave me this big poster, and on the poster it said, "To our beloved leader who inspires us to do many great things every single day." To me, those words, beloved and being inspiring, mean so much more than all of the titles you read off in the introduction. I think so. To me, being powerful really is about having that kind of an impact. And I think you can have that kind of an impact as a leader only if you put the person in front of you in the center and not yourself. To me, that's the big takeaway, if you will, that I'd love to leave the audience with.
Well, I'd start at the other end quite quick. I'd start with those of you who are first hearing this and beginning to think about how it fits into your life. And I'll just tell you a story. About 10 years ago, Fast Company did an article about me, and it was written by Harriet Rubin, this incredibly sympathetic person. She followed me to India, and she wrote this beautiful story. I wish everybody had their life seen through such compassionate eyes. And I got a lot of emails, and I got 2 emails from people working in the same technology company. And they happened both to be young women, and the first one said, "I'm so lonely." And the second one said, "I'm so lonely." And it just seemed like a logical thing to do, that I would introduce them to each other. But I took the cautionary step of writing to each of them and saying, there's somebody else in your company not very far from you who feels like you do. You're interested in learning more about mindfulness and spiritual practice. Can I introduce you to each other? And within minutes, I got the same response from both of them. No! Don't tell anybody! So, over about a year, I did work with them, and I said, it's probably okay if you meet each other, and we each keep a secret. It's not like it's the 50s and it's communism and it's McCarthyism. I mean, it's not quite like that, you know. And they did, and they met each other, and they started bringing other people together, and they formed what we know in India, and there's a satsang, or in Buddhism is a sangha, a community of people who started sharing best practices. Don't we do that in our world, sharing best practices? And the best practice is mindfulness, and the best practice is yoga, and the best practice is compassion. And their curriculum was a little bit different, but they still met the same laws, and they were able to incorporate it in their life. So that's what I would say. From the other side, if you're starting, gather people around you that you love, you trust, that are on the same path. And imagine